You've always been selfish, even as a kid. Family comes first. My father said while demanding I take out a second mortgage to bail out my brother's third failed business. He thought being the responsible son meant being the family ATM forever, but I'd already done. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, the son who'd never asked for anything, being called selfish by the man who'd enabled my brother Derek's financial disasters for the past 15 years. But this time was different. This time, they weren't just asking me to sacrifice my own future, they were asking me to risk my children's. I'm Marcus, 34, and I've been the family's go-to problem solver since I was 16 and got my first job to help with household expenses. While Derek was partying through high school and college on Dad's dime, I was working construction summers and weekends to pay for my own education. While Derek was traveling Europe after graduation, finding himself, I was building my accounting practice from nothing. While Derek was getting married in an expensive ceremony that Dad somehow found money for, I was eloping with Sarah because we couldn't afford a wedding after helping the family through another temporary financial crisis. The pattern had been established early and reinforced constantly. Derek would create a mess, Dad would panic, and somehow it became my responsibility to clean it up because I was doing well, and family helps family. Over the years, I'd cautioned loans, provided down payments, covered emergency expenses, and even let Derek and his wife Amanda live in my basement for 8 months while they got back on their feet. Each time, I was promised it would be the last time. Each time, I believed them because I wanted to believe that family meant something more than financial transactions. But this latest request crossed every line I'd tried to draw over the years. Derek's landscaping business, his third attempt at entrepreneurship, was failing spectacularly. Not just failing, but apparently he'd been using business credit cards for personal expenses and now owed over $200,000 to various creditors. The house he'd bought with my cautioned loan was already in foreclosure proceedings. Amanda was pregnant with their second child, and Derek was facing potential criminal charges for check fraud related to payments he'd made to suppliers with insufficient funds. The full scope of Derek's financial irresponsibility had been hidden from the family until creditors started calling Dad's house looking for Derek. That's when we discovered he'd been lying about the business's success for months, using new credit to pay old debts while maintaining a lifestyle that suggested prosperity. The landscaping trucks were repossessed. The equipment was seized. The business bank accounts were frozen. Derek had managed to destroy everything while convincing everyone, including himself, that he was on the verge of major success. What made the situation even more complex was the involvement of our Uncle Robert, Dad's older brother, who had been Derek's business partner in the landscaping venture. Robert had invested his retirement savings into the business based on Derek's assurances that the contracts were solid and the revenue projections were conservative. When the business collapsed, Robert not only lost his investment, but discovered that Derek had been forging his signature on loan applications, using Robert's good credit to secure additional funding that Derek then misappropriated. Robert's discovery of the forgery had triggered a family crisis that went far beyond Derek's usual financial incompetence. This wasn't just poor business judgment, this was criminal fraud that had victimized a family member who trusted Derek implicitly. Robert's wife, Aunt Linda, was devastated. They'd been planning to retire next year, and Derek's actions had destroyed their financial security. "Marcus, you have to understand," Dad had said during our family meeting last Sunday. "Derek made mistakes, but he's trying to turn his life around. The business could still work if he just had some capital to restructure the debt and start fresh. And we have to think about Robert and Linda, their family, too." I'd heard this song before. 3 businesses, same chorus every time. The auto repair shop that failed because Derek spent more time talking to customers than actually fixing cars. The restaurant that closed after 6 months because Derek had no experience in food service, but thought his people's skills would compensate. Now the landscaping business that failed because Derek treated business credit cards like personal spending money and apparently had no qualms about committing fraud against family members. "Dad, I helped with the auto repair shop. I helped with the restaurant. I've been helping for 15 years, and every time Derek ends up in a worse position than before. Now he's committed fraud against Uncle Robert. This isn't just about business failure anymore." "This is different," Amanda had chimed in, her hand resting on her pregnant belly in what I recognized as a calculated gesture. "We have children to think about now. Family has to stick together." You know what it's like to be a father. You wouldn't want your children to suffer because of mistakes you made. Jessica, my sister, had been unusually quiet during the meeting until this point. Then she spoke up with information that changed everything. Marcus, there's something else you need to know. Derek didn't just forge Uncle Robert's signature. He's been using your name as a reference on credit applications. Some of the creditors think you're a business partner. The room went silent. I felt my stomach drop as the implications hit me. What do you mean he's been using my name? I asked, though I was already dreading the answer. Jessica looked uncomfortable. Amanda told me last week. Derek's been telling creditors that you're a silent partner in the business, that you've been providing financial backing. He's been using your accounting firm's reputation to establish credibility with lenders. That's when Dad dropped the bomb. They weren't asking for a loan this time. They wanted me to take out a second mortgage on my house, the house where my wife Sarah and our 2 kids lived, to provide Derek with enough capital to pay off his debts and restart his business. $250,000. Not to loan Derek, but to give him, because he can't handle the pressure of owing family money right now. But there was more. Dad explained that Derek's creditors were threatening to pursue legal action not just against Derek, but against anyone they believed was involved in the business. Since Derek had been using my name and reputation, I could potentially be dragged into lawsuits even though I'd never been involved in the landscaping business. You've got the equity, Dad had said, as if that settled everything. And Derek will pay you back once the business is profitable. He's learned from his mistakes this time. Plus, this way you can protect yourself from any legal complications. The manipulation was breathtaking. They were asking me to pay $250,000 to clean up Derek's mess, while simultaneously suggesting that I was somehow already legally exposed because Derek had been using my name without permission. I'd looked around that living room, the same living room where I'd been told countless times that family comes first, and realized I was surrounded by people who saw me as a resource rather than a person. My mother sat quietly, as she always did when Dad made these demands, occasionally nodding to show support for whatever Dad decided was best for the family. Jessica nodded along enthusiastically, probably calculating how this precedent might benefit her own future requests for financial assistance. Derek looked at me with the same entitled expectation he'd worn since childhood, as if my success naturally belonged to him by virtue of our shared DNA. But Amanda's presence added a new dynamic. She'd been recording the conversation on her phone, claiming she wanted to make sure everyone remembered what was promised. I realized she was building a case to use against me if I refused to help, potentially planning to claim that I'd made commitments I hadn't actually made. The most disturbing part was how normal this felt to everyone else. No one questioned whether it was reasonable to ask me to risk my family's home for Derek's 4th business venture. No one suggested that Derek should face the consequences of his own financial irresponsibility and criminal behavior. No one acknowledged that I had my own family to protect. The assumption was that my success created an obligation to fund everyone else's failures, and any resistance to that assumption was evidence of selfishness. That's when I knew I had to take a different approach. I need to think about it, I'd said, buying myself time. But I wasn't thinking about whether to help Derek. I was thinking about how to protect my family from this cycle of exploitation that had been draining our resources and emotional energy for years. The first thing I did was consult with Tom Rodriguez, a family law attorney I'd met through my accounting practice. Tom had seen these situations before: successful family members being systematically drained by relatives who confused love with financial obligation. "Marcus, you need to understand something," Tom had said during our confidential consultation. "What your family is asking you to do isn't just financially risky, it's potentially devastating. If Derek defaults, and based on his history he will, you could lose your house. Your children could lose their home because your brother can't manage money." Tom helped me understand the legal implications. If I took out the second mortgage and Derek's business failed again, I'd be personally responsible for the debt. There would be no legal recourse, no way to force Derek to pay me back, and no protection for my family's financial security. Even if Derek signed promissory notes, his history of bankruptcy and financial irresponsibility meant those notes would be worthless. But more importantly, Tom helped me see the psychological pattern that had been established. Your family has trained you to believe that your success obligates you to fund their failures. That's not how healthy families work. In healthy families, success is celebrated and protected, not exploited. Tom also explained something I'd never considered: the legal concept of undue influence. He pointed out that my family had been using emotional manipulation, guilt, and threats of exile to coerce financial compliance for years. If this were happening between strangers, it would be considered financial abuse, he said. The fact that it's happening within a family doesn't make it less abusive. Regarding Derek's use of my name with creditors, Tom was clear. That's identity theft and fraud. You need to document everything and consider filing a police report. The longer you wait, the more it looks like you were complicit. The second step was documenting everything. I went through 15 years of financial records, tracking every loan, every emergency payment, every time I'd helped Derek or other family members. The numbers were staggering. Over the years, I'd provided more than $120,000 in direct financial assistance to Derek alone. Not loans assistance. Money that was never repaid, never even acknowledged as debt. But the documentation revealed more than just financial exploitation. It revealed a pattern of emotional manipulation that had been so consistent I'd stopped noticing it. Every request came with the same script: crisis, panic, family obligation, guilt, and finally, the threat of family exile if I didn't comply. I also hired a private investigator, Janet Morrison, to look into Derek's business activities. What she discovered was worse than I'd imagined. Derek hadn't just been mismanaging money, he'd been systematically defrauding suppliers, employees, and customers. He'd been taking deposits for landscaping jobs and never completing the work. He'd been selling equipment that was still under financing agreements. He'd been running what amounted to a Ponzi scheme, using new customer deposits to pay old debts while living beyond his means. Janet's investigation revealed that Derek had been using multiple business names and tax ID numbers to hide the scope of his fraudulent activities. He'd been operating under Green Valley Landscaping, Mountain View Lawn Care, and Premier Outdoor Services simultaneously, using each entity to secure credit and contracts while defaulting on obligations from the others. The third step was the hardest. I had to tell Sarah everything. My wife had known about some of the financial help I'd provided over the years, but she didn't know the full extent. I'd hidden much of it because I was embarrassed by how much I'd given and how little I'd received in return. When I showed her the documentation, when I explained what Dad was asking for this time, she was quiet for a long time. "Marcus," she finally said, "I've watched you sacrifice for your family for our entire marriage. I've watched you work extra hours to cover the money you give them. I've watched you stress about their problems while neglecting your own needs. But I won't watch you risk our children's future for people who don't appreciate what you've already done." Sarah's perspective was clear and uncompromising. "If you take out that mortgage and Derek fails again, and he will fail again, Emma and Tyler could lose their college funds, their home, their stability. Is Derek's business more important than our children's future?" When I showed her Janet's investigation results, Sarah was furious. "He's been using your name to commit fraud, and your family wants you to pay him for the privilege. This is insane." Sarah helped me understand something crucial. Your first obligation is to Emma and Tyler. They didn't choose to be born into this family dynamic. They deserve parents who protect their interests, not parents who sacrifice their future for other people's criminal behavior. The fourth step was preparing for the confrontation I knew was coming, but first I had to deal with the immediate legal threat. I filed a police report about Derek's unauthorized use of my name and reputation. Detective Ray Collins, who specialized in white-collar crime, explained that Derek's actions constituted identity theft and wire fraud. "Your brother has been using your reputation to secure credit and establish business relationships under false pretenses. That's a federal crime." The police investigation moved quickly. Within a week, they'd identified at least 6 instances where Derek had explicitly claimed I was a business partner or financial backer. In 2 cases, he'd forged documents that appeared to show my financial commitment to his ventures. I also sent certified letters to all of Derek's known creditors, explicitly stating that I had no business relationship with Derek and had never authorized the use of my name or reputation. Tom helped me draft these letters to protect myself from any future legal claims. Then I called Dad and asked him to set up another family meeting. This time I came prepared with documentation, legal advice, and a clear understanding of my own boundaries. "I've thought about your request," I began, "and I can't take out a second mortgage to fund Derek's business." The reaction was immediate and predictable. Dad's face reddened with anger. "Marcus, this is your brother we're talking about. Family doesn't abandon family." "I haven't abandoned anyone," I replied calmly. I've provided Derek with over $120,000 in financial assistance over the past 15 years. I've cautioned loans, covered emergencies, and housed his family. But I won't risk my children's future for another business venture, especially when Derek has been committing fraud. Derek exploded. You've always thought you were better than me. You've always been Dad's favorite because you make more money. Derek, I've been Dad's bank account, not his favorite. There's a difference. And now I've discovered you've been using my name to commit fraud against creditors. I filed a police report. The room went silent. Amanda stopped recording. You called the police on your own brother. Dad asked, his voice barely controlled. I called the police because my brother committed identity theft and fraud. He's been telling creditors that I'm his business partner and financial backer. He's been using my reputation to secure credit under false pretenses. That's not a family matter, that's a crime. Amanda started crying, but this time it felt different. She wasn't trying to manipulate me, she was realizing that Derek's actions had legal consequences that could affect her and their children. Marcus, please, Mom finally spoke up. Derek made mistakes, but he's trying to provide for his family. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive him? Mom, I can forgive Derek for making poor business decisions. I can forgive him for borrowing money he couldn't repay. But I can't forgive him for using my name to commit fraud, and I can't enable his criminal behavior by giving him money to cover it up. That's when Jessica revealed another bombshell. Marcus, there's something else. Derek's been telling people that you're planning to invest in his next business venture. He's been using that claim to secure a lease on new office space and equipment. The scope of Derek's deception was staggering. He'd been using my name and reputation to build an entire fictional business relationship, creating obligations and expectations that I'd never agreed to. Dad, Derek hasn't just been making mistakes. He's been systematically defrauding people using my identity. If I give him money now, I become complicit in his fraud. I could lose my accounting license. I could face criminal charges myself. Dad's anger deflated as he began to understand the legal implications. Derek, is this true? Have you been using Marcus's name without permission? Derek's response was telling. Instead of denying it, he became defensive. Everyone in business does that kind of thing. It's not like I was hurting Marcus. I was just trying to establish credibility. You were committing fraud, I said. And now you want me to pay for the privilege of being victimized by you. The meeting ended with Dad storming out, but this time Derek didn't follow. He stayed behind, and for the first time in years we had an honest conversation. Marcus, I'm scared, Derek admitted. I don't know how to fix this. The police investigation, the creditors, Amanda threatening to leave, I've destroyed everything. Derek, you can't fix this by getting more money from me. You need to face the consequences of your actions. You need to cooperate with the police investigation. You need to make restitution to the people you've defrauded. And you need to get professional help for whatever drives you to make these destructive decisions. But what about Amanda and the kids? What about Uncle Robert? Uncle Robert is a victim of your crimes, Derek. Amanda and the kids are victims of your choices. I'm not responsible for cleaning up the damage you've caused to other people's lives. The aftermath was swift and dramatic. Derek was arrested 2 weeks later on charges of wire fraud, identity theft, and embezzlement. The investigation revealed that his fraudulent activities had affected dozens of victims and involved over $400,000 in losses. Amanda filed for divorce and moved back to her parents' house with the children. She also provided evidence to prosecutors about Derek's financial activities, hoping to minimize her own potential legal exposure. Uncle Robert and Aunt Linda were devastated but ultimately grateful that Derek's crimes had been exposed. We thought we were losing our minds, Linda told me. We couldn't understand how Derek could have made such terrible business decisions. Now we know it wasn't incompetence, it was criminal intent. Dad stopped speaking to me for 6 months. Jessica initially supported Dad's position, but changed her mind when she realized that Derek's actions could have implicated the entire family in his fraudulent schemes. Mom struggled with the situation, but eventually understood that enabling Derek's criminal behavior wouldn't have helped anyone. I wanted to protect Derek, she told me, but I was really just protecting myself from having to admit that my son was a criminal. The most difficult part was watching Derek's children suffer the consequences of his actions. His older son, Tyler, was 8 years old and didn't understand why Daddy was in jail. His daughter, Emma, was only 5 and kept asking when Daddy was coming home. But I realized that protecting Derek from consequences wouldn't have protected his children from the ultimate devastation of his criminal behavior. If anything, it would have enabled him to create even more victims and cause even more damage to his family. Derek was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison and ordered to pay restitution to his victims. Uncle Robert recovered about 30% of his losses through the restitution process and insurance claims. Amanda found work as a dental hygienist and began rebuilding her life as a single mother. The most surprising outcome was how the family dynamic changed once Derek was no longer able to manipulate everyone with crises and emergencies. Without the constant drama of Derek's problems, we were able to have normal family relationships based on mutual respect rather than financial transactions. Jessica apologized for her role in pressuring me to enable Derek's behavior. "I thought I was being loyal to family," she said, "but I was really just being loyal to dysfunction." Dad eventually acknowledged that he'd been wrong to expect me to fund Derek's criminal activities. "I was so focused on protecting Derek that I forgot about protecting everyone else," he admitted. "I treated you like a resource instead of a son." Today, 3 years later, our family is healthier than it's been in decades. Derek is scheduled for release next year, and he's been participating in financial counseling and addiction treatment programs in prison. He's written letters of apology to all his victims, including me and Uncle Robert. Amanda has remarried and is expecting another child. Her new husband adopted Derek's children, giving them stability and a positive male role model. The kids are thriving in their new environment. Uncle Robert and Aunt Linda were able to recover enough of their losses to retire comfortably. They've become advocates for elder financial abuse prevention, speaking at community events about the warning signs of family financial exploitation. My marriage to Sarah is stronger than ever. We've been able to focus on our own family's goals without constantly diverting resources to extended family crises. Emma and Tyler have college funds that aren't being raided for other people's emergencies. We bought a vacation home with money that would have previously gone to Derek's schemes. Most importantly, I learned that family loyalty doesn't mean financial servitude or criminal complicity. Real family support means helping people become self-sufficient and law-abiding, not enabling their dysfunction or criminal behavior. It means setting boundaries that protect everyone's best interests, not just the person making demands. The hardest lesson was understanding that saying no to unreasonable requests isn't selfish, it's necessary. My obligation to my wife and children comes before my obligation to extended family members who refuse to take responsibility for their own lives or respect legal boundaries. Derek still asks for advice about financial decisions in his letters from prison, but he doesn't ask for money. That's the difference between healthy family support and toxic family exploitation. I'm happy to share knowledge and guidance, but I won't sacrifice my family's security or legal standing for someone else's poor choices. The family dynamics that had been established over decades didn't change overnight, but they did change. When family members realized I wouldn't be manipulated by guilt or threats of exile, they had to develop healthier ways of relating to me. Some extended family members still think I was harsh for involving law enforcement, but those same people never offered to help themselves, they just expected me to handle it because I was doing well. Their criticism confirmed that I'd made the right decision. The most important outcome was teaching my children about healthy boundaries and family relationships. Emma and Tyler learned that love doesn't require financial sacrifice or criminal complicity, that family members should support each other without exploitation, and that success creates opportunities, not obligations to fund other people's failures or crimes. I'm still the family member people call for advice, but I'm no longer the family ATM or the family enabler. That distinction has made all the difference in creating relationships based on mutual respect rather than financial dependency or criminal conspiracy. Family comes first, but that means my wife and children come first. Everyone else comes second, and their needs don't override my family's security or legal obligations. That's not selfish, that's responsible. And it's a lesson I wish I'd learned 20 years earlier, before Derek's problems became criminal behavior that hurt so many innocent people. The experience taught me that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for a family member is to let them face the consequences of their actions. Enabling Derek's financial irresponsibility had escalated into enabling criminal behavior. By refusing to continue that pattern, I forced him to confront his problems and get the help he needed. Derek's story isn't over. He has a chance to rebuild his life when he's released, but this time he'll have to do it honestly and within legal boundaries. His children will have the opportunity to know their father as a reformed person rather than a criminal on the run from consequences. That's the real meaning of family loyalty, protecting everyone's long-term interests, even when it means short-term pain. It's a lesson that cost our family dearly, but it was a lesson we all needed to learn.